to count the number of odd elements in an array using a for loop. So first, let's start with defining an array that has, let's say, 8 elements. Put some random numbers, whatever. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then, so how to use a for loop is that first, the structure of a for loop is for. You have to write for at first. Um, and then you're gonna need a counter. Most people use I, so let's use I, but it could be any letter you want. So no, okay, let's say I equal to 0. Um, I is smaller than 8 elements. Um, I plus plus. And you start off with opening the bracket, and inside you're gonna do something, some instruction that's gonna be executed. So it's kind of similar to the while loop, but uh, a lot of things are already like there, so you don't need to worry about the counter or increasing the counter or the condition. So how do you look at the for loop is that first thing you look at the counter, so this is 1, and second you're gonna see if the condition is respected. So here you're gonna give some kind of condition. So in this case, it's gonna be if the counter I is smaller than 8, and then you do something at 3. So you're gonna execute some all the instruction inside first, and then once you're done doing something, well, all the instruction inside the loop, you're gonna increment your counter. So that's how for loop works. Um, so basically, how we're gonna go and find all the odd elements inside this array is that we're gonna go and check um, every number. So let's say you have a number and you're gonna apply the mod operation. Uh, and it doesn't, so for a number to not be odd, the mod 2 is not gonna give you 0. So it's basically the operation is like you divide by um, this number 2. So let's say you have 4 as a number. So how do you do that is that you're going to divide 4 by 2, and it's going to give you 2. So 2 is a whole number because it doesn't have any decimals number, like it's not like 2 dot something, like it doesn't have any numbers at the end. So you know that the mod is going to equal to 0, and that's in this case. But if you look at like 5 mod 2, it's going to do 5 divided by 2. We can see that it's equal to 2.5. 2.5. So you can see that over here you have a 0.5 or point something. So every time you have a point something, the mod is not going to be equal to to 0, so you'll know that it's an uh, odd number. So let's create our for loop. First you create for, and then you set the counter to 0. This is going to be the counter for the loop. Like to go through all the elements, you'll need that loop, that counter. So you have 8 elements in your array, as you can see here. So the condition is going to be if I is smaller than 8, and this is to increment. But first, before incrementing, you're going to check every number and see if it's an odd number. So array if condition, array at position I mod 2 is not equal to 0, because that's what we just showed earlier. So if the array at position I, so at the current counter of the loop, mod 2, if you apply the mod 2, the not equal to 0, then you're gonna increase the counter of the number of odd elements. But since we don't have a counter yet, so we'll just name one. So let's say in counter is equal to 0 at first, because you don't have any odd number. And every time it detects an odd number with the if, you're gonna increase that counter. So counter plus plus. And basically, when you're gonna have your array, and so 2 5 4 65, 2 5 4 65, 7 8 and 5, 7 8 and 5. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. Oh, it's missing one number, so let's add something. 98. So 98. So remember that when you have an array, it's always going to start at index 0. So if you have an array of 8 elements, the index is going to be from 0 to 7. So always the size, the number of elements minus 1. Well, basically, no, the size minus 1. So in our case, it's going to be 8 minus 1. So it's going to go from 0 to 7, like this. And then, so when you first start the loop, the counter is 0, so you don't mind. The counter of the loop is also 0, so it's going to say, okay, 0 is smaller than 8, and you're going to go check this condition here. So you're going to check if the array at position 0 mod 2 is not equal to 0. So when you do that, it's 2 divided by 2 gives you a 1. But 1 is a whole number. It doesn't have any decimals. Like after, it doesn't have anything. So it's going to give you 0. So the counter will not increase. But for this case, if it's 5, as you can see, like after the position 0, it's not going to increase this counter, so this line will not execute. But after you get out, the counter of the loop is going to increase, so I plus plus. Now the I is going to be equal to 1. 1 is smaller than 8, and the array at position 1 mod 2. So we're going to go check that. So it's 5 divided by 2. It's going to give you 2.5. 2.5, but you can see that the 2.5, there's a 0.5, so it's not a whole number. So the counter will now increase. So now the counter will be equal to 1 because it's counter equal counter, the old value of counter plus 1. So let's say you have your counter is equal to counter plus 1. So as you know that your old counter value is going to be 0, so it's going to be 0 plus 1. And once that's going to give you this, so it's going to set this result as the new counter, and it's going to go through that for every single element. So your loop is going to basically go through all of this, and the answer, so here you have odd element, this one is also odd element, this one too, and this one. So you basically need to print 4. So let's test this out. Forgot to print it. So let's just print that. See out the number of odd elements is, and you print out the counter. So counter you do this and you check. So yeah, the number of odd elements is 4.